Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Ain't Gonna Be No Stupid, where my purpose is simply to help your voices be heard, to maybe get some wisdom from our stories. And I really think it's impossible to hate each other when we hear each other's stories. And I'm here with my friend Naihal and former student who always kept me on my toes in my speech class. I just remember that about you, Naihal, that you just always were that person that funny that we're going to be talking about PTSD today and maybe
Yeah.
even executive functioning because I still do PTSD and my executive function. You were the one to keep me in check with certain things. I don't even remember, but I just remember looking at you going, I'm not used to having students like you. You're so brilliant. You're so on top of it. And so if you
Thank
could
you.
do a better job of introducing yourself than I just did, but
Sure. Well, I appreciate the kind notes, Miss Para. I guess I can call you Amy now since
yes,
we're
yes,
in
yes.
school.
I have a feeling
Um,
you were going to call me that.
yeah, it's just second nature. We had, I think it was my junior class English when I was 17, which is actually when I first started finding out that I was getting diagnosed with PTSD. So it's an interesting timing within all of that for sure. But yeah, my name is Naihal Wajid. I am a graduate of UIC in communication with a master's in project management. Um, as Ms. Para has said, Amy, I'm diagnosed as a CPTSD with anxiety and depression, and I have overcome PTSD from a tragic event that happened about 5 years ago and some
Mhm.
continued trial trauma. And
Yeah.
I'm happy to talk about both of those today and how we can help others overcome that through different
Wow.
types of therapy.
This is amazing because this has been a common theme in season one and now season two. We're now 3 episodes in and we are talking all about that. So this is interesting what
Yeah.
God's doing. I love it. So before we get into the meat of the program, let's talk about a stupid, innocent, ignorant story of something that we maybe thought was good at the time or we just didn't know. Or like I said, it could be as recent as yesterday. Um, I usually go first on this one. So I'm going to go first because based on the notes in your sweet baby ribs story, you're going to tell. I wanted to mention this. When I was younger, my mom would often, we would lived in a small town. So we would have like a cow in the freezer, like a quarter of a cow.
Right.
And um, that's how we, lived with more. I mean, made the dollar work better for us. And I remember we were eating liver and onions one day, and I was like gagging, like I could not stand it. And I said, "This is good for me, right?" She says, "It's very good for you." So I remember putting French fries in my mouth, the liver in my mouth, and squirting ketchup, and then just trying to get the taste and trying to eat the liver. And I don't think I've eaten liver since then. But that just reminded me of what you were saying. I was like, "Oh, Amy, nice try, but forget it. Find your."
Horrifying. That's
It
horrible.
was
And
gross. I mean,
especially, yeah,
no,
go
it's
ahead.
just no, it was just funny, gross story from my childhood that I tried to be, I tried to be good. I really have tried to be good all my life, but maybe there's a metaphor in there, right? Just because it's good for you and it
Yeah.
doesn't taste well, it doesn't mean you have to eat it, right?
Right, just because it's good for you doesn't it mean it's not palatable to you.
Yes,
You know
yes,
what I mean?
yes,
It's not something that agrees with your personality. And
exactly.
like when I was a kid, so I am from the south side of Chicago. My dad owns a small restaurant on Greater Grand Crossing. We've been there for about
Nice.
20 years.
Give us a
Yeah.
name so we can shout out to it. What's the name of it?
His name is Best Gyros. It's on 76th and Cottage. We've been there for
Nice.
about 20 years. Very
Oh,
small place. My dad used to bring home like sweet baby Ray's sauce, and we used to put like it in spaghetti. And I grew up in like Midway Oak Lawn area, which is like a mix of Mexicans, Italians, Polish people, and Arabs. So
yeah,
like
I love it over
any
there. So
flavor,
diverse.
yeah, our neighborhood's so diverse. So when you have spaghetti, because my family is partially Italian, we threw anything that you would find on there in there. So was
Nice.
it, barbecue sauce, ketchup, or was it just like, maybe whatever spices you had left in the fridge? But that was always the go-to in our house.
I love that. You just mentioned another ketchup made me think of, you ever have a ketchup potato chip sandwich?
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, just put the chips in the middle of the bread and white bread and ketchup.
We used to do potato chips with ketchup and just like so it has that extra crisp.
Yeah,
So nasty now that
I
I
know,
think about
gross,
it.
right? I know,
Yeah,
but that's so funny.
definitely. That's the
But
comfort food of childhood.
I know. I do love your story about how your mom dressed you. Let me tell you another story about my childhood too. Like
Yeah.
when I was growing up, my mom would cut our hair in little pixie cuts. So we were
Mhm.
often mistaken for boys, my sister and I have a brother as well. So they always thought we were three boys. But one time I just remember shopping, because you're going to tell the story about your mom, how she dressed you. And I was so adamant about wanting brown. No, I wanted blue shoes, like, blue suede shoes pretty much is what they were. And we're always at the store and I would always beg for blue shoes. And she said, no, wait, no, everybody had brown shoes. And I wanted brown shoes because everybody had brown shoes. And she said, no, get the blue shoes because blue shoes go with everything. So I never won that argument either. And I think I have way more brown shoes than blue shoes now. But I think it's funny because every blue shoe since then, I've never found one that ever matched, that ever made me happy. And I wonder, I'm making the connection right now that maybe this is trauma from my blue shoes argument from my mother back in the day. I never made that connection, but I would always try to get blue shoes to go with my blue leggings and nothing ever was right. Holy cow, I'm just now processing that. No charge, right?
Yeah. No, no charge at all. I think your parents are a huge decision, are a huge informant on how you dress yourself later and how you present yourself later. Moms, especially if that's who you're closest
Yes.
to, that's who's going to shape you the most. And
Yeah.
I can definitely say I also didn't have much of a choice in my dress as a kid. So we had a collection. I grew up in the 90s. And, I mean, obviously, I didn't grow up in the 90s. I was born in 96. So I'm an early 2000s baby. And my mom had a collection of felt hats from Gymboree. And she would switch them out and always made sure we were like the best dressed kids no matter what the situation was. We definitely there were times where we couldn't allocate complete funds to our clothing first. Everything else came first, right? And my mom, she always wanted to make sure no matter what situation we were in, when we went out we looked good so people would respect us the way we were supposed to. So
And you had
we
9 kids in your family, right?
so I am one of five now. So I have a biological brother and
Okay.
4 stepbrothers and a
Okay.
stepsister.
Okay.
So yeah,
Good.
so one of six. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and I'm the
That,
youngest of the six as
that is
well.
wild. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. I know when you just said you were born in 96, we are 30 years apart. I grew up in the 70s and I was born in 66. So isn't that amazing? When you said that, you said, well, I'm not really a 90s baby. I'm more of a 2000s. I'm like, oh yeah, I always reference the 70s as my childhood. And those are the, like, to me, those, that for whatever, do you feel the same about 2000s, that that was the best decade? Because for me, I felt like the 70s was the best decade, but it's only because my perspective was coming from a little kid who sat around and watched Brady Bunch all day, you know?
Yeah, I definitely can say, I was alive. I think I was like 4 or 5 around 9/11. So like, you
Yes.
go from we lived in the city and then we moved to the suburbs the same month that around the same time that happened. So it wasn't like I didn't know what was going on because I was young, but you always felt that separation in elementary school, but we didn't understand. I don't think we were really explained to on why it was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but from my childhood, I don't remember much besides being engulfed in my religion from a young age and then eventually having my choice with it later.
Yeah.
So, like 9/11 wasn't something that really impacted Muslim kids because they were too young to tell us what was going on.
Yep.
And peers naturally separated from us anyway. And because we were a majority Arab school, it was kind of like segregated in a sense for a long time within those younger years.
I was going to ask that maybe PTSD would have come from being Muslim during that time and the discrimination. Maybe if you were older, you would have felt the discrimination more from,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think, because I was in kindergarten at the time, like that's 100% a huge deterrent why I don't have a lot of trauma for being Muslim in the United States. I don't really have any repercussions from that. Mine are
good,
more
good.
due to like personal
Yeah,
um, acts and traumatic incidences.
yeah.
One of the big ones being happened in college. So my trauma isn't necessarily stemmed in childhood reasoning. It's more from an adult perspective. So
So then,
I lucky I didn't have to have as much of a pressure on that from,
yeah,
the religious aspect.
terrible. So then let's transition into the situationship that probably gave you PTSD, and you can share CPTSD, which is um, the C stands for
Complex.
complex. So
Mhm.
we can talk about it. We can don't have to talk about it, but
Sure.
however much you want to share with what happened to you that caused you to get the complex PTSD.
So I started getting panic attacks my senior year of high school, and they couldn't figure out why. And then my ex-boyfriend, uh, my freshman year of college, raped me for my virginity. And then less than a month later, I was used for fraternity hazing in an oral fashion. That was not my consent, obviously. And
Oh,
I went to UIC school board and they denied my case and did not refuse the fraternity. So I spent 4 years going to school with the people who did that to me. And I not only find it that one thing was I was never on campus in the first place because of my job. So it made it a little bit easier. But I really don't think that as a public university, they were really protecting the students that needed it most, especially within freshman dorms. So I always say an air to caution when staying at UIC, just because they may not be the most receptive to their Title IX liabilities. Um,
interesting.
yeah,
You,
as I have it up here. I'm a very proud UIC alumni and I loved my program. I'm a communication theorist, but do I think that they have the best safety regulations for their students? Absolutely not.
and that's so common in the military, even in religious organizations. This is cover up. And the whole
Mhm,
Me Too movement, I'm a part of it as well.
mhm.
I really respected when that was when women were coming forward and just saying, it happened to me, it happened to me. And I don't know what more has changed with that, but let me tell you, this is just got to stop. So thank you for sharing that painful experience. So I know
Yeah,
it changes your brain, right? Completely changes your brain chemistry when you have trauma. And as a result of that, you still are experiencing PTSD, CPTSD, and that manifests in what way? How does that look?
so I guess the first thing that we can go into is the formation of the brain. Once your body has experienced trauma, it interprets the trauma differently than your mind does, which
Mm-hmm.
causes them to not be on the same playing field anymore. So, what happens is when your brain experiences trauma, your temporal lobe, which controls your emotions, is essentially caved in. So, it creates a deformity in the middle of your brain. That deformity can only be fixed through dialectical behavioral therapy and rapid eye movement therapy, trauma therapy, whatever you think might be the best solution for you, because trauma is inherently personal and it has its own personality, which is really hard for it to be diagnosed. But if
Yep.
you see a brain on a scan, a normal brain scan, and then a PTSD brain scan, or for me, a CPTSD brain scan, you can see that it has almost like a, not like a dent, but like a severe shift in the way that it's formed. And that reasoning is so your brain can operate on a day-to-day basis without inherently messing up what you have in your life, and you're able to function without any more. So it's your brain doing you a favor to be able to deal with your trauma, but in the back sense, you are just hiding everything under the rug.
Yeah.
So the problem is, how are you going to bring this trauma up to then reform your brain into thinking that you're safe? And that is how we are trying to figure out how to solve our PTSD, right?
You know what you just described that so beautifully, and this is one of my arguments in school of the students that have ADHD or they have executive functioning skill deficiencies. They have challenges with that, and I'm always saying they're not dumb, they're just traumatized. I wish we had a person like you or somebody who has that kind of knowledge in the school where they really are working and looking at a brain scan and doing exercises with your eyes, right? Isn't that something? I'm still under treatment for that. Like I have these beads here. This is one thing I use that's like to kind of look down the center of it, and then you kind of cross your eyes. It's not really crossing your eyes, but you go down and up and down and up so that your eyes just like converge on the, so like the lines go like I don't even know what it's doing, but it's supposed to bring back like that whole parasympathetic nervous system. And your body is in fight or flight all the time because of the trauma too, right? And that's where you miss, like, I lost my notes for the show. We talked a week ago. Okay, that is like a typical occurrence for me, right? 100%. So that's so you talk about your treatment, but before you do that, I wanted to talk about this book you recommended, The Presentation of the Self in Everyday Life.
Yes.
And he talks, I didn't read the whole thing, but he talks about how we present ourselves. And it reminded me, it's like he talks about in theatrical terms, right? So if I could read the Shakespearean poem, All the World's a Stage, it's a monologue from As You Like It. And I think that kind of ties into what we're going to talk about with some of the things that you just said. So we can unpack this or not talk about it with what you're going to share with how you are overcoming your trauma. But I think you'll appreciate this because you're a literary scholar as well. So all the world is stage and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first the infant mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, and then the whiny schoolboy in his satchel. Last scene of all that ends this strange eventful history is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. Shakespeare.
I love that.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting. We do have to present ourselves. I try to be as authentic as possible, but I know that I haven't been completely because my brain has been in survival mode, right? So it's not that we're faking it, but we're kind of faking it, right?
We're always faking it. And
Yeah.
I think the one thing we have to realize is, Goffman states that life is like a play, kind of, going back to this quote. And we put on these masks to make other people feel comfortable in the light of performances. And we have a backstage area where we can be ourselves with our teammates that are also playing the same play as us. So think about the job you're working now and your coworker is behind the scenes when you're not teaching students. Or for me, when I have to work behind the scenes with a team at a nonprofit to hold an event for the public, you have to put on that certain face for the public to be able to present something or to get them to believe something.
Yeah.
And then in the backstage area, that's not necessarily true, and you can be more genuine, just kind of like how I can put on being professional here, even though I also have, I recently got diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Oh.
So I have bipolar disorder and PTSD,
Mm.
and I'm still willing to work a 40-hour work schedule and go to grad school full time. But the reason I'm able to do that is because you have to be able to control, and what you can control is how you're presenting yourself on stage and how well you can keep your act together. And once those masks are removed, that's when you can see the true character of a being, which is almost impossible to do unless they let you into their backstage area. When you have trauma, that backstage area is almost cut off for the person that's viewing the performance. They're not allowed to go backstage. Only certain VIPs are allowed to go backstage. You know what I mean?
Such a great metaphor.
Yeah, and that's why I really like Goffman's presentation of self, because we get to learn that we're in control of what we put on there, but we're not in control if someone comes up on stage and rips our masks off. Then what do we do?
Right. I was going to ask you those triggers. do they put them backstage then with you? If somebody's like triggered, opens a wound, how do you handle those moments? Because isn't that then the true self? Or is that just the survival reptilian brain talking?
I think it depends who does it. You know what I mean? And it also depends on how willing you are to be able to control yourself in that situation. Because if you've gone to therapy, you've learned that people will rip your mask off all the time. What are you going to do when it happens? Whereas
Yeah.
if you're not and you're playing the stage and you're not acknowledging what goes on in your backstage, then you're only going to be performing and leaving everything out for everyone else. The balance is being able to put what you need to your personal life in a way where only certain people can see it. So that way you're not only protecting yourself in the sense of being traumatized, but also in the sense of your professionalism. So that way you're not, as they say, spilling onto the stage.
Right. So
So
it's like on LinkedIn, no one ever really gets too political or emotional. It's all the
mhm.
professional kind of that mask, right? That's where we
Yep.
found each other again, because I saw you doing a marketing seminar and I was like, where were you when I needed you? And you're still here.
Yeah.
But you were talking so much like almost a psychologist, like you have a psychology. What's your communications and your master's in what?
Project management. So they don't have too much to do with each other,
No, I
but
think
my
they do.
undergrad,
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely they do. Communication, I think you can do anything with, like, that's a perfect pair for whatever. You could put communication with any kind of sandwich and it would be a perfect combo.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed. I think one of the best things about being able to go to UIC is their communication department and the resources they have to learn about the research and the psychology behind the human mind. And you know, we can even, just like you said with LinkedIn, social interactions are performances. So, and those performances need a stage, and those performers must guard it. So obviously, when we're performing on LinkedIn, there's other people that regard those performances, but we also have that director that's showcasing everyone how to do everything, which is a social network on which it controls on, you
Oh,
know.
yes.
So,
Wow. Well, we titled this episode Ain't Gonna Be My Stupid Self, right?
yeah,
Why did we choose that title?
because when you experience trauma, you only have two choices. You either can live with it or let it live through you. And
Mm,
personally, for me, it's taken from when I found out that I needed treatment to now, I say it would be about 4 years, 4.5 years, almost 5. And if you let your trauma live for the life that you have, you're not going to be able to control many aspects of your life because you're living in fear of what could happen, which
mm,
happens with a lot of survivors. And also because we're not in an kind world to survivors of PTSD, one, because you can't see it. And the other thing is, when you've been raped multiple times, people ask you, how did you let that happen to you again? And that's a question that I've received a lot and a lot of scrutiny for. Unfortunately, you know, it wasn't my fault.
right.
And,
Thank you.
you know, for some survivors, that's not easy to say because they're confused about it. And most of the time, it does come with confusion.
Yeah.
So being able to control your own diagnosis and knowing, facing it head on and learning about how you can live with it and be able to interpret is going to make it easier
So
overall.
let's get practical then. Somebody's here, they're suffering from PTSD or panic attacks, and it may not even be because they got raped, but what 3 practical things? You can do more than 3, but what 3 practical things can they do today to get over that or to not let this control them?
First of all, if you think that something is wrong, see a medical professional, see a psychiatrist. Please do not use drugs. Drugs will only, you know, don't use drugs, don't go into alcohol. I think those are the first two down pits for anyone who's suffering with this because they want to numb themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it. There's a medication that can help you that will make it easier for you and hopefully will help save your life. So that's my
Mm-hmm.
number one point
That's
is
good.
go and get professional help.
Mhm.
for things that you can do personally for yourself. Write every single day, write whatever you're feeling, write however, you know, your emotions are that day. So you have something that you can even bring to psychiatrists to be able to help you diagnose it. And my favorite is taste therapy and grounding. So,
What is taste therapy?
taste therapy is, so I have an Instagram called Nini Eats. It's on my it's hashtag Nini Eats on Instagram. And I use taste. No, go for it.
Nini, hashtag Nini eats.
Yeah, it's my Instagram. It's my first name. So Naihal. And my Instagram highlights meals that I cook. I use cooking as a form of therapy. And the taste therapy comes into the whole thing about being palatable. So the way that your food is your personality, right? Because it's based on your environmental changes, and certain foods can bring back certain memories for you
Yeah.
depending on the flavors that you grew up with in your home or in your childhood, you know, your environmental structure. That's why the difference between like my palate and yours might be different because of where you grew up. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Whereas, you know, I grew up where there was like a certain palette of food. My family was Pakistani, and then my step family was Italian.
Mm,
So like we have a very interesting mix of flavors that remind me of home.
yeah.
But I use those flavors and that taste specifically to ground myself in the moment, knowing that I have this fresh meal in front of me to help me be here in the present moment and not disassociate. And those that are in the audience that don't know what disassociation is, it's when your body and your mind are not in sync. This is usually in the Quran, it's a form of unconsciousness. So your body, your soul and your body can technically separate. I think everyone, if you're religious, you know, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, your soul is placed within a body, and sometimes your body is not placed in the correct soul. We can get into a whole conversation about this separately. But when you're going into taste therapy, your goal is to rehome yourself to your center home in your body. To do that, when you're cooking, you'll be able to taste those specific notes that will remind you of the body that you're currently in. So that is what triggers your grounding to be in place rather than to disassociate to other parts of your consciousness. Does that make sense?
You have changed my life with this because one, I have been treating food like gas at the gasoline station. I don't have a
Mm-hmm.
car anymore, but I treat it like, because we have 23-minute lunches at school, right? You always
Mm-hmm.
have work to do, places to run to the office, whatever you have to eat, do everything, all that. And I just, you just blew my mind right now, because in my last episode, we talked about body mind connection and how to attain that. But I never thought of it. No wonder people love to cook. But see, when you're alone, you know, single people, that we eat standing up by the sink, or we eat with our dog on the couch and we feed
Yeah.
each other, you know, or he doesn't feed me. But I just realized, like I was just saying, like I literally yesterday ate a meal, and I ate slowly. And when I ate Thanksgiving, because I got room service for Thanksgiving, and I ate half of the meal that I normally, when I was with a bunch of people, I would have been eating the whole plate, but I saved half. But I was trying to be mindful. I was trying to eat. I was trying to chew. I was trying to take my time. And I think now you've just changed my whole MO with how I eat. Like literally, you just blew me away with this, because I didn't realize this the palatable, like it's like how you also digest what's happened to you, like rape. How do you digest
Mm-hmm.
the trauma? It's the same way. How do you eat the things that happen to us? And oh, I love that. I just feel more grounded even thinking about how I'm going to go forward. Thank you for that. That's a beautiful
Yeah.
insight.
No, I'm glad that I can provide that. Yeah,
Yeah.
taste therapy has been one of my strongest ways to be able to help with my symptoms. And
So
I've been
you,
able to.
sorry to interrupt. Do you sit down when you eat then? Do you set the table? Do you take your time? Do you like, are you a slow eater?
I am a slow eater, but also like, you know, acknowledge that I live by myself as well. So I sometimes will eat out of my freezer. Sometimes I will eat out of my fridge. But the
Yeah.
key here is not, I mean, it is how you eat if that's what's your speed, but it's how you, it's the flavors that you're eating, you know, what
Wow.
you're putting in your body, because you know that you're not gonna feel good if you eat shit, if
Yep.
I put it in like a short
Yep.
term.
Yes.
But for me, being able to, I mean, I can relate this back to me having PTSD. I was in a really toxic relationship that did not cause my PTSD, but he had a lot of control over my diet. So I wasn't able to eat the things that I wanted to eat, then causing me to lose about 45 pounds in the process. So I went from about 117 and high school to about 89, 92 pounds in my undergrad.
Oh
And
my
then
gosh.
eventually, yeah, I wasn't allowed to eat. I could only eat certain meats, rices. There were a lot of restrictions that he gave me, and I was always forced to eat different things. And obviously, that's not healthy behavior.
Mm-mm.
So when I ended things and I was able to regenerate myself a few years ago, I was able to gain back not only 35 pounds, but I reestablished my place with food where I can choose what I want to put in my body that's not only healthy, but it's flavorful and it reminds me of what my home and my grounding is, which is vegetables, fruits, rice, clean meats, halal if I can get it. But let's just say that being Muslim in the city,
It's
not a
hard.
lot of halal places.
Not a lot, huh?
Yeah.
Oh man.
No, so I usually stick to fish now, for that reason.
Would it
But
be a wild caught, not farm raised fish? You have to be careful. Wild.
I'm
Either
okay with
way.
both. Yeah, I
Okay.
guess some Muslims it just depends. I try my best, but obviously no one's perfect. So
Yeah. Oh
yeah,
wow.
food
Halal,
is very
nahal,
important for you.
nahal, halal.
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
you said that the trauma, he didn't cause the trauma, but he definitely contributed to the trauma. Like, I think
yes.
that you still have trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Dynamic of your brain has been changed as a result of that experience. But you
100%.
you just described your future marriage, though, the way you described how you eat, how flavorful it's going to be, how it's going to be something you want to put in your body. It's your
Yeah.
choice this time. You know what I mean? I just thought about that when you were speaking. That I say that's prophetic words for your marriage, your future marriage.
Oh, well, thank you. I
Yes.
hope for the same.
Yay, thank you. If there is such a thing at this juncture of my life, but I'm open, but
Thank you.
only if God wants him. Like,
My
there's no
mom,
way I'm forcing it. No, thank you.
yeah. Well, I mean, if it gives you anything, my mom came here, with an arranged marriage in the 80s. And she actually divorced my dad 25, I think it was 20 years after marriage. And she remarried and like her whole life had a complete 180. So I think it's always about divine timing.
Yes, exactly. And I think we have to be open to it as well. You know what I mean? I feel like I can block it by my attitude or with the words I speak. Anything else you want to say before I end it with some rapid fire questions?
You are what you eat. So
Ooh,
eat healthy.
I like that.
And besides what you eat, you are what you perform, not what you think. So remember that behavior is first, and then, you want to do, behavior first and then your thoughts on it after, because you want to see, you are your actions. So think about what you're going to do before you do it.
That's so good. So wise. You're so wise beyond your years. I mean, you were always wise.
Um,
Like, they call that an old soul, and is that
yeah.
what they would call you?
I repeatedly get called the grandma of the group. So,
I think that's a
yeah.
compliment. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. I feel like I'm learning so much from you. I've always felt that from you. So,
Thank you.
all right, let's go transition into some rapid fire questions. What is
Okay.
one thing that you have on your bucket list?
Writing a book.
And what would the topic be?
I have a book that I want to release and I have most of it written. It's about the trauma that I experienced through poetic words. But the reason why I can't release it is because it specifically names my perpetrator and it is against legal action. So I am currently working to edit it so I can keep myself safe.
Just change the name, right? Or you have to do more than that?
So I actually have to change locations as well in the book. Both of my perpetrators are actually still free and are not in jail or serving time. So I cannot and will not live anywhere near the South Side for that reason. So unfortunately, when I go home, I have to be especially careful going to grocery stores, malls, parking lots, all of those things, because it is not safe for me to be in that neighborhood. So I have adapted my life to live on the north side of the Chicago for my safety.
Yes. And then do you are pressing charges?
I can't.
It's too late.
It's too late.
Well, the best revenge is live your life strong. Exactly. And it's not about revenge. God will take care of it. Like it's not 100%. Our job, right? We gotta not. Yeah, that's awesome. Yes. What is your favorite summer activity?
Swimming.
Oh, do you have a pool?
I don't have a pool. I don't.
Do you go in the lake? No,
I do. I was thinking about moving to a building with a pool in Chicago. There's very few of them, but I think the investment might be worth it.
Yep, the indoor, because we have an outdoor pool, and I don't even swim in the outdoor pool. I don't know why. But the indoor, I wish I had an indoor pool, because winter is when I really always want to go swimming. It's weird.
Yeah.
What is the worst place that you could get stuck? And it could be mentally, emotionally, physically. It doesn't have to be like.
Worst place you can get stuck? Well, I think being stagnant. When you're getting stuck being stagnant, which is basically the same thing, you're at a plateau. So your idea is, do you try and figure out how you can build step forward, or are you going to dig down?
So I love that, because like we're all in lockdown now. And so people perceive that as, oh, can't do anything, therefore I can't grow. But I think this is the best opportunity for personal growth, right? Reflection, that sort of thing, journaling, like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Those rocks can always be taken to build stairs, and you can always try and figure something out to build a bridge. So
you and your poetry. I can't wait to read your book. Oh, that's so poetic. What is the most interesting you have in your purse, wallet, bag?
Most interesting. Well, I keep a notebook and a pen in my backpack to always write down my episodes come and go, so I can't really control when they arise. Obviously, medication makes that easier, and but I have a fragmented memory, so I write down a lot of things. So I guess the quirkiest thing about me is that I keep a note, like a sticky notes and a pen, like someone with dementia would, to like write down their like notes.
Because it's like how I have to roll too, like the dementia. You just described like somebody with dementia, but let's break that curse. We're not gonna speak that over our life for sure. But that is
right.
We've already been living it as in our younger years, right?
When you have PTSD, you have to think your brain is being deformed to forget things. So when you take medications to sleep or any other things that are trying to have you work on your day to day, you have prescribed amnesia to forget certain parts of your night or your morning to be able to function throughout the day. So writing those things down in those times and making sure someone can stay accountable for what you do in those times will really make some progress on your own progress in your life.
I love this. Naihal, you're so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your story. This has been such a great time. Is there anything we want to do? Do we want to do a 3, 2, 1?
3 books that you should read: How to Manage Your Everyday Life. And I think that's specifically on creativity, by, I think it's Jocelyn Glei, Glei. There's also How to Unfuck Yourself. which I think it teaches a lot about that whole behavior first and then look into your actions. And that is by John Gary Bishop. And the last one is You're a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero.
I'm going to read all of these.
Oh yeah, I totally recommend it. Manifestation and being able to control what you can in your life is really helpful when with PTSD you can't control your own emotions necessarily. So controlling exterior parts that are not that you can be controlling of them, but you can manage them in a way to make your life a little bit more easable for you to get through your day to day. And I think not only time management, plan management, but then also really just thinking about what space you do have to be able to dedicate to what you need to do most is how you can move forward with your PTSD in little steps.
Oh my gosh. So then two challenges or two specific actions we need to take, or
So,
two meals we need to make, whatever. What two things do you want to do?
do Takeout Tuesday, even if you're broke. Everyone deserves to eat out. Everyone deserves a day to treat themselves. Takeout Tuesday is mine. So I take out, sushi, whatever. I live in Chicago. So whatever it may be, definitely, and go outside.
Oh, that's so good. It's beautiful out today. So make sure you get
It
out there.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Go
Awesome. And then
outside.
one final thought, question, challenge, epiphany, encourage, whatever you want. One.
Make memories while you have the time to do so.
Oh, I love that, because I feel like at 54 years old, I feel like, oh, I wasted my life. I didn't do anything. What am I doing? That's a lie, right? That's a lie. So I love that you're saying that, because just being in this moment with you is just such a blessing. I'm so grateful to have this time with you, Nahal. You've been an amazing guest. And thank you so much for your wisdom. And I really pray for your journey to be healed 100%.
Thanks, Miss Para. It's always a pleasure to help and be here if you need anything. So
Thank you so much.